Hello, good morning or good afternoon, depending when you're enjoying this webinar. So welcome. We're here today with some incredible guests to discuss how organisations can navigate a competitive marketplace for specialist digital skills. I think this conversation has been happening really probably over the last decade, and it changes with AI. We've been talking about the digital skills gap for a long, long while, and the challenge doesn't seem to be going away. In fact, when we talk to organisations, when we talk to universities and learning organisations, individuals, people looking for career progression, that challenge seems to be ever greater. So we know that the demand on one hand for specialist digital and IT skills has never been higher, yet organisations are very much struggling to keep pace. We know that certainly over the last sort of couple of years, there has been a marked decrease really in early careers. So how do we balance that? How do we balance the need to maintain that skills collateral within your organisation to maintain competitive advantage versus the cost and competitiveness and rapid acceleration of AI, etc. So today, with our panel, we're going to explore the current state of specialist digital and IT skills. We know that everybody's talking about AI, cyber, data, but what does it actually mean? These are very, very small words, but hugely wide skill sets required. AI in dentistry is very different from AI in construction, for example. Then we look at the recruitment challenge. Why hiring externally is often expensive and more increasingly, I think we could say, is probably unsustainable. And then, of course, we can't have a conversation around digital skills without very much thinking about the AI revolution. So how are emerging technologies compounding the digital gaps in some organizations? We have this kind of paradox, I think, at the moment where AI are changing the way in which we recruit. We've got more demands for AI skills than ever before, but there's arguments to say that actually that's reducing the need for early careers and entry-level roles. And then finally, we're going to talk about different pathways. We're going to talk about the role of degrees and apprenticeships, how practical and flexible strategies can build more diverse, future-ready teams from within. So we'll be joining experts from the Open University, and I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself in a minute. And we've also got, I think, in Phoebe, someone that's been through Open University, so very much looking forward to hearing from you. So if we could go round and if we could introduce ourselves. So Jill, could we start with you, please?
Yes, of course. Lovely to be here with you all today. I'm Jill Shaw. I'm Director of Teaching for Computing and Communications at the Open University. So that in my role, then I'm looking after over our qualifications at undergraduate. So that's computing and IT, cybersecurity, computer science with artificial intelligence, also our postgraduate qualifications and our apprenticeships. So right across the board.
Okay, I'm impressed you have time to be on this call. That's brilliant. So thank you for that. Autumn, could we hear from you, please?
Yeah, hello, I'm Autumn. I am a senior lecturer at the Open University, and I am also in computing and communications, but I specialise a bit more into software development, web development, mobile development, that side of things. And so my role is very much in terms of running some of our modules, and also I've had quite a big role in our apprenticeship program and developing that.
Brilliant. Thank you. Brilliant. Have you on call, Autumn. Phoebe.
Hello, I'm Phoebe, and I work at RDT as a senior software engineer. I've been here just over 6 years when I started as a degree apprentice through the OU's apprenticeship program.
And last but not least, Jon.
Yeah, I'm Jon Evans. So I'm Senior Manager within Digital Services for Powys County Council. So Powys is a local authority within Wales. We're a very sparse local authority covering a huge land mass within Wales. So yeah, sort of digital skills are in demand, similar to most organisations right now in terms of cybersecurity, cloud infrastructure, software development, and project management. And yeah, we're sort of keeping obviously a keen eye on the AI and where that fits into all of those categories, really.
I think that's a really good insight. So Phoebe, John's just talked about some of the digital skill shortages and gaps perhaps within his organisation. What about within RTD?
We focusing quite a lot on the AI, obviously, because it's everywhere these days. So to help insurance providers streamline their processes and make them more automated, we're definitely making sure we use AI quite a lot with our day to day and what we offer them as our customers. Such as obviously insurance claims and policies can be quite a manual process. So we're helping build a platform which we have items that make use of AI to help them with document processing when they receive lots of documents from claims and policy documents like schedules, and helping them automate all this process through a workflow. So a document can come in and the AI can handle it, summarize it, and pass it on further down without so much manual intervention.
Okay, and do the customers feel that, good or bad?
I think the customers would feel it as a good thing, as I guess as an automation, we could, as part of our process, we could then potentially send out, or our customers can send out an automated email to say, thank you, we received your document. And that could all be part of our automated workflow process we have.
The speeds things up front is good. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've talked very, very briefly. Jonathan, just very quickly before we go on to the next section, just to come back to you. Obviously, you were talking about some of the digital skills that are in demand, but do you have some examples of how the council is using some of this technology to perhaps improve services or to frankly make, let's be honest, taxpayers' money go that little bit further?
Yeah, so there's a number of themes that we're sort of working on. So I suppose the first and foremost is all around making services available to the public as they want it. As you know, we all see that the public want services 24/7. That's what they get from a sort of private sector and their sort of e-commerce world. So they want to see that within the public sector as well. So we spend a lot of time in terms of making those services available online, customizing them, and doing that sort of whole end-to-end journey for them, really. So then, the other sort of flip side to that is the whole back office type of the organization, part of the organization. So it's all about improving efficiency with our staff, what tools we can give them, what systems are available to ultimately help them provide a better service to the public as well. So a lot of the time, those two sort of themes sort of come together, but they can be distinct as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's great. It's brilliant, John, to hear you starting that conversation around what the customer wants. And I think that's certainly a theme that we should continue on today. So, John and Phoebe, you both talked very briefly, and thanks for sharing around how you're using some of these technologies to improve services for your customers, to make things more efficient. But obviously, those skill sets, they sit within what we would call, I guess, human capital. And actually, that doesn't grow on trees. So in terms of recruitment and keeping that level of knowledge sort of relevant and current, how are you approaching that? So I wonder, Autumn, if you have some thoughts on that, actually, just to bring you in terms of talking around sort of the sustainability of the recruitment challenges, whether, the debate between kind of development, buy, hire, develop talent.
I think a lot of organizations at the moment are finding it hard to recruit digitally, partly because we've got a constrained workforce. And also because often when you get to the point of hiring, you really need someone right now. So you're in the very difficult situation of having to solve a problem because someone's left, or because there's some new problem you've got to solve really quickly. And so hiring someone in can be really challenging. If it's a contractor, they don't know your organization. If you're going away to go and find somebody as a full-time employee, they might not be able to start straight away, and so on. And when they do come, they don't have any organizational knowledge. They might have used tools and techniques in a different way, in a different place. And that, again, really delays the ability to get on with the job. And when we look at that in a slightly wider context about dealing with cyber threats and so on, that that the time when you really need someone can be really critical. And I think, therefore, looking at recruitment in a kind of a longer way in terms of developing talent and so on, to gain employees who want to be in the company and feel that this is where they want to work is really important.
Yeah. So it's interesting you've touched on workforce planning. You're right. We feel that a lot. I work with lots of different employers, and that's absolutely spot on. Autumn is that sense of urgency, and I'm not going to go as far as panic, unless of course you're unfortunate enough to have a breach. So Jill, in terms of that sort of workforce planning, how do you do that in a world where things and skill sets the demand moves so quickly? I mean, what's relevant now just wasn't around 6 months ago. I mean, that's the kind of reality we live in. Also faced with recruiters. If I was recruiting for a cyber expert, I don't know what good looks like. I don't speak cyber. So, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think these are really big challenges. The Open University's Business Barometer report from the end of 2025 highlighted that so many organizations have these skills gaps, and they don't have a strategic plan for how to develop their workforce. So I think that's just as Autumn's mentioned, having a strategic plan to upskill and develop your own workforce is definitely the right place to start for employers, because you've got the people, they know how most of the place functions and works. You can work with them to develop them. And in the Open University, we have the options of studying part-time or full-time intensity for degrees, but also for with an employer in an apprenticeship. So there's quite a lot of options there that employers can look at to help their own staff who they've got move up into those new technologies, the new areas that are evolving really quite quickly.
So you've sort of touched on the fact that developing talent from within, and from personal experience, I know that developing talent, investing in talent can generally transform a business. Phoebe, I know RDT brilliantly focuses on young talent. Now, I work with lots of employers that talk about young talent, but actually, I think you guys actually kind of walk the talk. So the floor is yours, because I'm quite excited about this. So at least I'm hoping I've got this right, but my understanding is that you work with a lot of schools and young people interested in digital careers. So really striking young. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about some of the work that you guys do. And more importantly, if you've seen any impact in that, if you've got any stories where you've kind of engaged and then you've seen that all the way through to showing an return investment for the organization.
Yes, so we're a small company, we've taken on a lot of apprentices. I think we're on maybe even our 5th cohort of apprentices. And I work in the technology teams, and that's mainly where they go to start with. It's all the new technologies or the web technologies, which is more current. So it's good for them to start looking at that early on rather than legacy insurance systems. So I've attended several careers fairs, lunchtime talks at mainly the schools near where we're based. As if they want to have a career with us, it's not too far for them to go. But since there's been more cohorts of people, I've sort of stepped down from that and passed that on to our new apprentices, as they've got more current knowledge, and it's a bit more familiar to see the younger faces, like fresh in the apprenticeship, give the school pupils that I've just started this apprenticeship. This is how it is. Yes, some other people may have their friends at university, but the fact that they're earning and getting knowledge that they can put into practice straight away is such a big advantage in this market, in this day and age, because experience really is, you can't put a price on it. That really is what we're looking for everywhere. And it's so rewarding, as when I've obviously gone to schools, and then when I've even seen them coming for work experience, and we actually have quite a few, I know 2 that are on my team who have gone through all the stages from careers to the work experience, and now I manage them.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, that's cracking. That's fantastic. I love stories like that. You've touched very briefly that you focus on the local area. And I think that's that's a huge challenge that we don't often talk about when we talk about digital skills. We tend to talk about it in this kind of massive kind of challenge. But what we found is that you have hubs around the country of specialism. So, cyber's doing very up north, web technologies tend to focus in London. So, Jon, coming to you, how does Powys County Council approach, and the important word here is potential digital talent? Because I think it's incredibly kind of difficult to spot that potential. So, talk to me about how you wave your magic wand and do that.
Yeah, so as we all know, digital skills are very, very competitive, particularly in local authorities, and we're all sort of fighting for the same pool of people, and that's the risk of it. So a number of years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, we made a very intentional move to sort of grow our own, and we've sort of recognised that as the way to do it. So we attended a number of sort of school fairs, career fairs, that sort of thing over the years, and just getting the message out there that Powys is this careers within Powys and what we offer and everything really. But and what we've done and introduced to pretty much all of our junior roles within digital services, that we'll advertise it on a sort of apprentice type role, and we've seen great success to that we're getting young people who are at the start of their career, getting them in, putting them through the various programs and seeing them grow through the organization really. So it's a case of us just rewarding those people for being keen and actually wanting to go through that progress. And historically we've seen that with job descriptions and person specs are very, very formal in terms of what you need to tick and that sort of thing, where we've sort of tried to relax that, particularly for our apprenticeships, to make sure we get people and we reward their sort of enthusiasms and their overall skills rather than very specific sort of digital skills. And yeah, we've seen that as a very successful, and we've had some real great news stories, to be honest, where people have progressed through the organization, where that's worked. And I suppose the other element that we try and encourage is work experience and allowing people to come into the organization for short periods of time and longer periods of time, where we can help them gain some skills and see if things are right for them really.
So interesting enough, that sounds frankly like a lot of work and a huge amount of investment from not just from individuals but from the organisation, which brings me on to retention. So if I could bring you back in, Autumn, on this one, as an organisation. So Jon and Phoebe both talked about that real focus on developing early careers. How do you prevent that talent being poached?
I think it's a very challenging problem, and it's something that we've come to know through our apprenticeship program. So something that we spotted a few years ago was that we had started losing a handful of apprentices in their third year of study over a 4-year apprenticeship. And we're digging into where these apprentices were off to. And we were seeing quite a few of them who were being poached by other employers, and the apprentices were thinking, great, I'm doing really well, don't need to finish my apprenticeship. Bad news for the OU, and it's bad news for their original employer. So there's a number of things that we've really thought about with that. And I think that the first is making sure that the apprenticeship opportunity that we're supporting with the employer is high quality. So it's something the apprentices will want to stick out in terms of the opportunity to learn things and to be paid a reasonable salary. But we certainly don't want to see our apprentices being on an apprenticeship minimum wage or something like that, because they will soon be off, I'm afraid to say. But also from our perspective, we've looked at how we've designed the apprenticeship. So this year we're launching a new digital apprenticeship, which is taking the level 6 apprenticeship, which was 4 years, down to a 3 years worth of study. So really to maximise the chance of apprentices managing to finish and really be able to progress within the organisation they're in. And the other thing we've looked at is introducing some level 4 apprenticeships, which is just a single year, to lower the risk of finishing, but also to give employers the opportunity to take a little bit more risk about who they recruit, so they can see results quicker, so they finish the apprenticeship and potentially get into work. But also to mean that for apprentices that they might be taking on, to broaden diversity. So what Jonathan was saying there is really important to us. We don't just want to be taking the best of the best as they finish A levels, but people who can really add something to an organisation, can really fit within it, so that they feel that that's their home and they're more likely to stay and then benefit the employer as well, which I think is really important. So they're kind of part of that community almost. I mean, Phoebe was there talking about how they're recruiting locally, and I think that's so important for employers to not just get really good employers, but people who are grounded in their local community, tapped into it, so they have all that kind of support structures around them, so that they feel comfortable and confident as their lives progress. So alongside those, the level 4 provision that we've got in England and the level 6 in England, we also have level 6 degree apprenticeships in Wales, which mirror the same approach that we're using in England, but specifically targeted at the requirements of businesses in Wales as well. And that covers off cybersecurity, software development, and a data analyst approach, which personally I'm really excited about, because it allows us to not only give that kind of local approach to both England and Wales, but also a national approach to some larger organisations which might have offices throughout the country.
One of the things that we've already sort of touched on, we've obviously talking about degrees and apprenticeships, and some of them we talk to employers is how do we make sure that those degrees and apprenticeships are relevant. So at TechSkills, we work very, very closely with employers, but that's not enough now. What we're finding, Phoebe, you said something earlier which was really interesting in terms of, and it was a slightly different context, but I'm going to use it to create a link here. That you talked about the fact that actually you tend to send the newer apprentices out to engage with schools because actually their knowledge is more up to date. What we've found when we talk to other employers and within TechSkills is that the world has changed. So I'm quite old. I'm probably the oldest on this call. But when I was coming up through the ranks, my job was to learn from my manager. So, I replicated what they did. That's what success looked like. And actually, I was expected to do the same as they did in the same way that they did. Now, what we're finding is that entries, early careers and apprentices going into the organization are expected to have a set of skills and a voice that's going to have an impact on that organization, and that sort of level of relevance. So when we think about the impact on digital teams, I was talking to an employer recently, and it was fascinating. It wasn't actually the impact on digital teams, it was in the finance department. And they said they've got some brilliant graduates and apprentices had come into their finance team, but they didn't know how to use Excel. And I said, well, wow, you would think they knew how to use Excel. Instead, they were using AI. And when I said, oh, well, is that working? And they said, well, they're doing it quicker, they're doing it more effectively, and it's always right, which I thought was quite impressive. But yet the emphasis was still on training this team's AI and Excel, rather than when we challenged it and said, well, actually, how do you do that reverse mentorship? How do you encourage those apprentices and walking into an organization to actually work with their managers and say, actually, there's a better way to do it through AI? How do we give them that level of confidence? So, Jill, I'm going to come to you in terms of, in your experience, what is the real impact of AI, not just on digital teams, but across an organization?
Yeah, I think there is a real tension there because, like you say, a lot of those administrative tasks are being replaced by AI systems and tools, and that makes things much more efficient in some regards. But also has that added potential problem of if we have no junior entry roles, how people progress. So I think that you've outlined that really clearly. I've been thinking about it through conversations with lots of employers in different areas. An example is within law. The increased use of Gen AI tools means that law firms have dramatically reduced their recruitment of paralegal roles. They just don't need as many people at that level because the systems can take on those jobs very much more quickly. But a particular employer I'm thinking about there has been working on looking to the broader skill set that they want their new entry roles to fulfill. So thinking about those communication skills, being able to think critically, to kind of apply the learning how to learn skills, so that they're ready to develop with their more senior managers. And I think the outcome or the solution focused approach sometimes can be really useful, so that rather than thinking about the smaller solutions, the smaller outputs, thinking about where we're looking towards in the next year or two with those new recruits, so that we're building the skills that they'll be useful for them beyond those digital skills.
Yeah, I think that was very, very, very succinct and very well answered. And I think that we talk to lots of businesses that are saying to us, look, we're not recruiting for early careers. But I think, we might not feel the pain now, but certainly in the next couple of years, we are going to feel the pain as a country and sector by sector, as we realise we don't have anyone in that pipeline. Which brings me back to you, Jon, if that's okay, again, with Powys. I know this is a huge question. So you're challenged to answer this within about 60 seconds because it's a massive question. But yeah, how has AI changed things, for you, your team, your organisation?
So yeah, big question. I, I think what it's all about for us is how, and as I started on earlier on in the conversation, really, our focus is all about delivering the services for our customers. So and a lot of those interactions with our customers, the really important ones, stay the same in terms of face-to-face contact and real contact. But so what we see within our roles really is getting our AI to allow people or our staff to have more time to actually deal with that sort of thing where it really matters. So there's lots of examples that we've implemented, which is it's freed up a lot of time. So so social workers can spend more time with their clients and things like that, really. So our focus is very much not about replacing people and post. It's more obviously there is an element of efficiency and making services quicker and so on, but a lot of it is actually freeing up our carers and social workers and so on, but actually so they're not working ridiculous hours. They're not trying to reduce some of the pressures that we see all the time in the media that some of these sectors are under. So it's a case of trying to strengthen their connections with people and actually make their work-life balance a little bit more tolerable and that sort of thing. So it's all a case of making that those roles better, and of course is coming back to the earlier point around making services available for, via a website and that sort of thing. It's also there's lots of work going on at the moment to make those processes a lot more efficient, and AI obviously helps all of that as well, really.
I think that's a fantastic answer in terms of, so Phoebe, in the way that Jon was talking, we don't often hear that narrative. Often we hear the scaremongering that AI is killing jobs, despite the fact that we know historically every single digital revolution has increased jobs, has increased our economy. And I think AI will be the same. But what Jon's talked about very authentically is the fact that actually what AI brings is it allows time to do what matters. It allows that more customer-facing interaction. And we can really resonate when we're talking about the sort of public services. But how does that translate in the kind of private sector, for the insurance sector? How does that work then? When earlier in the conversation, we talked about the fact that actually, arguably, it meant you had to have less face-to-face interaction with the customer because AI did some of that. So how do you balance that in your organisation?
So I'm more on a development team rather than so much customer facing. But in terms of the development side of things, we've given the apprentices access to the AI from the get-go. So for them, it's a good opportunity. Obviously, they've never seen our code before. So it gives them, it's sort of like a coding assistant. So obviously they can ask us the questions and have face-to-face and interactions, but it's also if they want a quick answer on the fly, or if they're trying to understand how things piece together and maybe feel they're not confident enough to ask the questions, it gives them like a little assistant to help them out. And it's been really useful as they've been able to make changes straight away to the code. Yeah, we review it and check it all because in coding terms, AI isn't always right. It can hallucinate a little bit because there's a lot going on. But in terms of work, it all seems to make everything a lot more efficient. So it does mean we have got more time for the people, similar to what Jon said. We've got more time for people, so we can have more face-to-face discussions, and we can have more team collaboration sessions, and review things a bit more and put a bit more thought into it. But yeah, using the AI with the code is quite interesting as so in terms of the apprentices, it can make them a fresh perspective come in, and it might question, the way we're writing it now as efficient as it could be, which is good for everyone because then it means we are improving our product and therefore improving what we're delivering to our customers.
See, I like that answer. I like that answer a lot. So in terms of, we've got public sector, we've got private sector, and at no point in this conversation have we talked about the kind of reduction of roles or investment in careers because of AI. In fact, actually, it seems to be that actually we've got more time to spend, so that's good. But everything around early careers is about creating those kind of future digital teams. And I think that's incredibly scary because we don't know what a future digital team looks like. I mean, that's quite challenging. Somebody had said, a year ago, these are the skill sets. We'd look back at that and think, no, that's not quite right. So I'm gonna pick on you, Jill. I'm gonna come to you as well, Autumn, to give you some preparation on this because I think this is a very tough question. Because how do degrees and apprenticeships help businesses are building that kind of, I'm going to use the word elusive, future ready digital team, while I think Autumn, you mentioned it, actually Phoebe, you mentioned it earlier as well, there is still a need for the legacy skills. Many businesses are built on these legacy skills, and we focus so much on the kind of new skills. What happens when those legacy skills retire out quicker than the systems retire out? Jill,
Yeah.
I'm going to pass that to you.
Thank you. It's a big question. I heard a quote from Demis Hassabis, who's the CEO of DeepMind, just a couple of months ago, who said, "Learning to learn is the most crucial skill for the future." And that really resonated with me when we're looking at designing new qualifications. So we have a new undergraduate degree, computer science with artificial intelligence, just launched. And there's a real challenge for us to keep pace with the changes. Everything that we produce is out of date tomorrow. So it is a real challenge to make sure that we don't have material we're trying to teach students that is out of date. And we have been really focusing on those professional skills, so critical thinking, communication skills, and reflective skills, being ready to learn, so that if an employer is looking at their staff and thinking about the options. So in the Open University, we have the part-time and also full-time intensity. We've got that flexibility so that employers could be looking and saying, well, our team could be upskilling gradually and developing those skills so that they are much more flexible and adaptable within the workforce, because none of us know really where we're heading. I think as well, that aspect on reflection. And early in my career, I used to find it so frustrating. I really didn't have time for reflection. I literally didn't make any time for it. And now I'm further on in my career, I've really seen the benefit of taking time to consider what my actions were, what the outcomes were, how I would improve in the future. And that's an incredibly useful and powerful skill that we're teaching through all of our qualifications. We have employability skills built in to every qualification. So I think that's the focus for us. And Autumn could say more about the apprenticeships. I think they'll really help broaden out our perspective.
That feels like the ball's being passed to you rather neatly there, Autumn.
Go Autumn.
Oh, thank you, Jill. Yes. So one of my roles at the OU, I have many hats, is I'm the module leader on a final year module which covers data analysis and management. So this whole issue with AI has been really on the tip of my tongue for the past year. And I think we've been through about 3 or 4 different ideas about how this module should look so that it can live for a reasonable amount of time, because typically we try to make sure our modules will last for about 7 years, and that gives us time to really invest in the module, to develop it, to be a high standard of teaching. And I guess what I'm starting to see as I try and use AI as much as I can in all of my own workflows is that there are still a lot of fundamental skills that I need to have to use it effectively. So what I'm expecting to happen as we head towards this new module is perhaps a third of the module or something will really focus on those fundamental skills. So what does it mean to use a database in a particular way? Why is one way more efficient than another? What do we need to think about to build up those kind of critical thinking skills that we've mentioned again, but very much in the domain of software development, data analysts, and data management, and so on. And then probably we'll end up with about a third of the module, which is how do you use AI in this context effectively? Something along those kind of lines. And then probably another third of the module will be really pushing the students to go out and find things, because what AI enables us to do is, like Phoebe was saying, allows students who might feel a little bit uncomfortable doing things to do things and get feedback. And I think that that's going to be a very new, powerful way for us to do teaching, and probably a very powerful skill to have in the workplace as well. And I think the kind of pedagogy, or if you like, that the way of teaching and learning in this area is going to really change. And so I would say we're really at the forefront of thinking about that and how to develop it. If I link that back to the apprenticeships as a whole, in the model that we've got, we're going to be spending about 50% of our teaching time with the students, teaching those fundamental skills at each point in the apprenticeship. And the other 50% is going to be where we are helping the students with work-based projects. So we're trying to decrease, as it were, the amount of having to sit and read books, and increase the amount of taking that and putting that into the workplace. And so I'm really expecting to see AI being used there, but also mentoring, as Phoebe was mentioning, perhaps between various cohorts of apprentices or within experts within the business, and also allow it to be more applied, because I guess traditionally in all teaching in universities, we choose a technology and we teach it. And that is there to teach those fundamental skills. But then as soon as the student leaves university, they have to learn what their organization actually does. But by allowing this time within our apprenticeship, we're hoping that then the organization, maybe they use LinkedIn Learning or something like that as their main platform, they can say, okay, so you've learned how to program. We actually program in this particular way. Go and do this extra bit that really gets it applied. And so I'm quite excited about the opportunity of AI here to really customize learning and free up some of that thinking time to generate, as Jill said, reflection, but also critical thinking, and that kind of, I don't know, boost people into really useful roles even quicker.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and it kind of chimes with what Phoebe was saying about, and Jill was saying around those kind of critical skills. I know some people refer to them as soft skills, but they're not soft skills, because frankly they're really hard. But actually, what I'm getting from you all is that sense of that demand for curiosity, and to recognize when something needs to be questioned. And I think that actually, I heard some which surprised me recently, around the fact that AI is making us dumber, and I absolutely contest that. Actually, the requirement that we used to have, we'd read something in the book, the expectation was that you would question it and you would challenge it. The brightest students and most successful in their careers, constantly challenging, constantly moving forward. I think AI is embedding that skill. It's just is going to become very, very kind of standard in the fact that actually, Phoebe, it was brilliant to hear you talk about the fact that actually the apprentices come into you and saying, this doesn't look quite right. I think AI might got it wrong. But conversely saying, oh, wow, okay, that's a really different way to do it. Perhaps we can be more efficient as an entire organization. The opportunity that AI kind of has almost to level the playing field, in terms of the voice that early careers come in to have the ability to have an impact in your organization, I think so. I'm quite excited. The other thing I'm just going to quickly touch on, Autumn, you sort of mentioned that actually you're looking for a kind of a longevity or a lifespan within a digital course of 7 years. And I think people listening will be thinking, wow, 7 years, how is 7 weeks a viable ambition in terms of a digital course? And I think when I first took over at TechSkills, I remember asking the same question, saying, well, look, how is it that we can have an accreditation that lasts 2 or 5 years? And then was frankly horrified to find that it can take up to 2 years to change a curriculum. But incredibly impressed by the kind of the agility, that OU show, but also in terms of working with employers and that reliance on the relevance and what's happening in industry, which you guys do brilliantly. I think at TechSkills, when I first joined, we had sort of 4 standard videos that went out to learners to say, hey, this will keep you relevant. Last year alone, we had over 100 enrichments and talks and provided by employers in order to make sure that actually we're now kind of gilding the lily in terms of that academic learning, the ability to keep learning and learn how to learn, Jill. I think that's absolutely critical, along with AI, along with the employers kind of injecting that relevance to say, look, you're on the right track. But ultimately, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We're going to rely on your skills across AI and digital. Jon, I'm gonna come to you in terms of, and I know we've touched on this a bit, but from your point of view, and from Powys Council, what advantages are you finding that kind of sort of flexible work-based learning offers compared with perhaps traditional training routes? And I say traditional training routes because OU have always been flexible. That's the whole point. We're excited now about the fact that we've got accessible learning. OU have been doing is what you do. But I think actually it's really interesting to see traditional universities, traditional learning organizations, private learning organizations really following your model, which means you're under pressure to keep getting better and better and better, to keep leading the way. It's hard to stay up front. So Jon, from your point of view, what advantages, does that flexible work-based learning offer, compared to some more traditional routes then?
Yeah, so and I think it's worth me going back briefly to what you were talking about earlier in terms of that. I think Jill said, and learning to learn. I think that really resonated, and that's really spot on, and obviously a lot of conversation around sort of how do you keep, if someone comes out of university, how do you keep those skills relevant? But I think it's spot on, that whole thing. It's enabling you to actually learn for yourself as well as through sort of other means as well. So, but in particularly in terms of the OU and how that's helped us, and that sort of flexible model and from work based as well. From a Powys perspective, we don't have any universities within our local authority. There isn't that many universities in Wales, full stop. But with Powys, we don't have any. So we had to do something different, or we have to do something different to try and get that sort of to encourages people into our organization. But yeah, the OU has offered us, we've had some really good success stories with our degree apprenticeships. Going back sort of 4 or 5 years now, we've had a few people come through that, and it's been great for us, to be honest. And the way those people have come through that and actually sort of flourished in their roles and progressed through the organization as well, it is great. And I think that's because of the whole flexibility. It also, I think, has helped us, help them as well, in terms of it's a sort of not quite as traditional as normal. And traditionally people go to university when they're 18 and come out when they're 21, and that's their sort of career. Where we found actually all of our degree apprenticeships have started a bit later in life, where they haven't had the opportunity to go to university straight away, and so that I think that adds a different sort of thought process and different way of seeing the world as well. I think so. I think that has really helped us, and it's created a massive opportunity for some of the people within the program itself, but also for us. There's no two ways about it. It's been a great success for us. And I suppose touching on to the earlier points we talked about, what happens if we train people and then they end up leaving and that sort of thing. That that hasn't been something we've had to really worry about too much. Of course, they could, but equally we've always seen that as actually we've got the benefit from them during that whole process. And the time they're with us, of course, is a great loss if we lose them. But the more flexible we are, and there's that sense of loyalty as well. So they set up that whole flexibility and allowing people to do it on the job, and with our support and talking to people, like-minded people, it's just really benefited us anyway.
Because you talked about that sense of loyalty, and I have to say, I think I hugely agree with that in terms of when you work with employers. That sense that the individual has of being invested in, it's there with them all the time. That real sense of, wow, somebody really cares about what I'm doing and my career, and is making sure that I'm able to develop as an individual. I think you're absolutely right, John. It's a great point in terms of you see it. It's real and it's tangible. That sense of loyalty and appreciation and satisfaction, that kind of employee and engagement enrichment, it has an incredible impact when you're investing in somebody's learning and their future. So Phoebe, you lived this firsthand. So it'd be brilliant if if you wouldn't mind, if you're okay with this, it'd be really good to kind of describe your kind of OU journey, but sort of right from the beginning in terms of what made you choose the OU and kind of why. So it's like you're on the couch, Phoebe. Share your hopes and dreams.
So I sort of kept my A-levels A-level options open, as I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do at 18. So I was like, I've just left school. I like technology, and I thought it was evolving quite quickly, and so it was always something I was interested in. So I did a little look online, and I wasn't quite sure about traditional university. I knew, I hate to talk about money, but the cost of it and student debt did slightly put me off. I know obviously sometimes it gets sort of gets ruled out. But I just didn't like that concept. I'm more of a practical learner. So the degree apprenticeships, the minute I found out about them, I was constantly looking and applying for those. And I like the fact of being able to apply what I'm learning at the same time. It helps me understand it better. And so that's how I came across RDT, which offered the OU apprenticeship program. Obviously, I've seen all the OU adverts on the telly, and I was like, oh, okay, they're big. And obviously didn't know much otherwise. But when I started with the OU, I liked we've all talked about the flexibility. Get all the content up front, and there's a breakdown of the planner, so I could study at my own pace. And if a work priority came up, I could just defer my study day for that week or 2 weeks or however long it was, and then catch up a bit later. Because RDT we're really flexible. If you need to take a few extra study days to get your assessment done, take those study days. They've taken you on and they've invested in me and obviously all our other apprentices to do the apprenticeship and do the work. There's no point you not doing well at the apprenticeship, because that's what we've invested in you for. So I've always felt really looked after at RDT, as when I was struggling with 2 or 3 modules at a time with my workload, they said, yeah, take that extra study day. We're investing in you. We want you to succeed and do well. But yeah, the OU were really good with when I had questions with modules. The tutors I had were really quick and really easy to get hold of. And they do lots of different tutorials at different times that best suit you, and quite a lot of them are recorded anyway. It's just so flexible, and learning and what I was learning and applying it in real time really helped me.
I think that's a really important point. When we think about the Open University, as I said, it's what they do. They've always been doing it. So it's almost taken granted the Open University that you've got access at so many different times that kind of work. They work for working people. But John, talk to me about how the OU works, from an employer point of view, because we hear a lot from employers, and the larger employers, it's not scary taking on apprentices, because there is an infrastructure and a network ready to support and work alongside, say, the OU or the learning provider that they've opted to work with. But if you're a smaller business, actually, taking on an apprentice, it can feel quite difficult in terms of how do you mentor them. So from an employer's point of view, talk me through the sort of what it's like kind of investing in the apprentice, but also working with the OU and how you feel that's benefited you as an organisation.
Yeah, so from our perspective, we we're quite used to apprentices, to be honest, and we've been doing it for a number of years. And as a service within Powys, so digital services I'm within, we've always really recognised that we need to take on apprentices. So it's almost become sort of second nature to us, to be honest. That we've, it seems the sort of win-win situation. So so it's difficult to sort of answer exactly how difficult it is, and all those considerations, because it's become sort of second nature to us, really. But from an OU perspective, it was very straightforward, to be honest. We had some good relationships with people a number of years ago, and they've talked us through the programs, what's on offer, and done sort of one-to-one sessions with us as managers and the potential people who are looking to join it, and everything, to show what sort of level of commitment they will need to give, as well as what we need to give. And it's been a fairly smooth process, if I'm honest. It's we're kept up to date with what's going on. We've invited to various events and meetings to sort of keep us up to track and everything. But yeah, if I'm honest, it's been relatively straightforward, and I just think it's a no-brainer for us, if I'm honest. And I'm quite a big advocate for it, and will always sort of sing the praises around it, to be honest. And from I'd go as far as saying it from an apprenticeship type, as a whole, apprenticeships, I would say that if we weren't taking on apprentices, I really don't know how we'd function as a service, to be perfectly honest. Because we haven't necessarily struggled with the recruitment and retention with that a lot of other local authorities have. And I think that's mainly because we've sort of taken that approach. Of course, it does make it a little bit difficult. You don't get that sort of hitting the ground running type employee that we talked about earlier. But long term, it's far better. And that's always it's worked out, really.
Just to finish, this is the last question, and Jill, I'm going to come to you, so no pressure. This has to be a brilliant answer. So Phoebe's talked about her journey. So from a learner point of view, Jon's talked about it from an employer point of view. I'd just like to finish off with not all employers are born equal in terms of investment in talent, just like not all providers are born equal. So therefore, not every learner has a good experience, not every employer has a good experience, not every provider has a good experience. So, if an employer is working with an apprentice and it's not going quite right, what advice would you give them or the learner in terms of, look, let's, and because there are pitfalls, and obviously we've talked about lots of the positives, but you can trip up. So what advice would you give to an employer, big or small, that's thinking, right, we're going to invest in our talent?
Yeah, and I think it's really lovely to hear from Phoebe on such a positive experience, but it's not always the case. Yeah, I think that looking at the bigger picture is really critical. So, we know that some employees, some of us have skills in some areas, and some super skills in some areas where we really need to work. And so we within the Open University, the apprenticeship program and our degrees really help develop the breadth of skills needed. So when students are on a module, that module only lasts a certain amount of time and they'll move on. So waiting and holding your nerve, I think, is really important to help that apprentice. And I think as well, looking at the longer term benefits in terms of reputation. So if an employer is investing in their employees and investing in their training and development, they get a reputation for that. I've seen numerous examples of where now larger companies have really set up an established graduate training program or an apprenticeship program, and they're in high demand, those places now, because and across all ages. And the other thing that I think that it fits in quite importantly with our social mission within the Open University is around making sure that we're avoiding widening inequalities in skills and opportunities. And I think an employer looking at it in the broader social context of having that opportunity to ensure training supports right from the early career opportunities right through to more senior roles. I think that, yeah, looking at that bigger strategic picture would certainly be my advice to make the best of maybe a small issue right now, but thinking about where this can lead, both in terms of reputation and in the bigger, wider, avoiding those inequalities.
This brings our session to an end. So look, I just wanted then just to close off with, we wanted to really focus on exploring, sort of talking about the skills gap, the impact AI's had on the skills gap, and, the role of apprenticeships and degrees and other programs in kind of closing that skills gap. And from a personal point of view, I just want to thank you for the positivity. And actually what's come through is we've heard words like loyalty and actually investment, and that sense of really understanding that to invest in talent, whether it's established talent progressing through an organization, potential talent who hasn't started yet, hasn't started their journey, or early talent that's just about to sort of, start on their apprenticeship journey or their degree program. What we're hearing about is that word investment, which is fantastic. And no one has talked about really risk, which is what we used to hear a lot. Is very, we do understand that it is difficult to recruit. We also talked, and Jill, I'm going to take your point on this, is this really the impact that investing in talent has in your organization in terms of the kind of helping others to learn, and that sense of curiosity that drives an organization forward. And I think really what we're starting to really understand as a kind of collective is that when you invest in that talent and you give that talent a voice, again, whether it's established talent, early talent, they have an impact on your organization. And I think we're seeing return on investment far quicker than we've ever seen it before. So look, on that note, just a huge thank you. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure to host this panel. So thank you very much.